Good afternoon. Thank you. I appreciate that. What comes to your mind when I say the American dream? What is, in your mind, this elusive yet very appealing promise? I teach about the American dream at James Madison College at Michigan State University, and there we learn about the American dream as a national ethos. It's a promise about opportunity, about success, upward mobility, and in a nutshell, it's the idea that prosperity follows those who work hard. So what did you think when I said American dream? I'm guessing that most of you thought about the house with the picket fence, maybe 2.5 kids, maybe something in the bank account. What do I think about? I think about money a lot. In my scholarship, in my teaching, I think about money, about those who don't have enough of it, so they're falling below or slightly above the poverty line. I think about those who have jobs with wages that don't keep pace with inflation. And today I'm going to talk to you about the third thing that I think about. What kinds of programs do we have in the U.S., federally and in this state, to make work pay? So today I'll challenge you to think about this while you're eating your delicious and free lunch. How can we support the American dream for those Americans who are working hard but have yet to cash in on the promise of the American dream? Because for far too many, this dream is elusive. Nationally, many of you know more than 1 in 7 Americans are in poverty. And in Michigan, this rate is even higher. Perhaps these numbers seem low to you, 15%, maybe that doesn't feel like too much. How about another number? 45 million Americans. Still not persuaded? Child poverty is even worse. More than 1 in 5 children in America live in poor families. And that statewide average that I just gave you masks another truth that's important to recognize. Poverty hits some communities far more than others. And you know this, living in Michigan. In Detroit and in Flint, more than half of the population of children live in poverty. About 40% of the residents in these two communities are poor. And in Flint, the numbers are even more striking in the last few years. A quarter of Flint families have annual incomes below $15,000. So what this means is that in the United States, we lack a sustainable, livable wage because more than 7 out of 10 of those poverty statistics that I just mentioned also work. A job alone doesn't lift you out of poverty. Even in Michigan, that has a higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage, this is still true. So my research is around the changing nature of our social support safety net. Pictured here is an old welfare building in Boston, which is the center of my research that I'll share with you today. It's hard to see, but on the side of the building, carved into the building, it says overseers of the public trust. And it represents the old welfare system. Think pre-welfare reform. But that old system where social workers would protect the public coffers and not want to give assistance to individuals has been completely demolished. We have shred the social safety net because we no longer support those without work. As a result, only about 1 million adults remain on the TANF rolls, or our direct cash assistance program. And most of those people, they cycle off pretty quickly. Even in the face of the Great Recession, we saw that people weren't turning towards TANF to assist them. And here, cut off slightly at the top, reads the new safety net, what I provocatively call our new welfare system, but it's our new support for working families who don't make enough money. Because the punchline to the change in welfare reform is that attaching social provision to work has created real benefits. This is the place where they get their direct cash assistance redistribution dollars because of the earned income tax credit. So here in other numbers is the story of TANF on its way out. 1.7 million cases nationally of TANF, but only 1 million adults served. Here is the flip side of the story. At the same time we are decreasing the TANF uptake, we are increasing earned income tax credit recipients to the tune of 28 million. So whether you count bodies served or dollars spent on the system, this really is where we're spending our cash assistance dollars. It's no longer going to people who don't work. Instead, it's going to supplement low-wage work in America. So many of you, I think in this room, are particularly familiar with the Earned Income Tax Credit. This is a reminder for those of you who might have forgotten some of the particulars. Who gets this? Only those who are engaged in some kind of employment during a year. If you have children, you get more, and it varies by number of children, filing status, and your actual income. And yet, in spite of spending billions of dollars on the Earned Income Tax Credit, we don't know a lot about what it's used for. Does it help propel families who are struggling to the American dream, or does it fall well short? My research, along with a team of other researchers, took place in Boston to answer very simple questions. And we went to the recipients, to the clients of this tax credit, to say, what are you doing with the money? What do you think about the money? These are the set of research questions that we asked these individuals. First, I became part of the process to learn about how taxes matter to working class Americans today. And so I became certified as a volunteer at a tax prep site, and I did nonprofit tax preparation to get people able to find people able to claim the credit, and also to assist people and encourage them to claim the credit. At that time, we took a survey with the people who qualified, and we said, how do you think that you'll spend your tax refund? How will you spend the Earned Income Tax Credit? We followed up 6 months later with interviews with 115 families that were stratified along a lot of different dimensions, by marital status, by race. All of them were working parents who had received some kind of tax refund through the Earned Income Tax Credit. Again, my research took place in Boston. The interviews that we did with these individuals lasted about 2.5 hours, and we followed up with those individuals later on. We waited 6 months after the receipt of the refund to make sure that they had had time to spend the refund and to see where it ended up going. We were picked up at the metro stations. It's Boston, so we had to find our way to their home somehow. They showed us around the neighborhood. It was nice doing the research in their homes because they could actually point to the furniture that they purchased with their Earned Income Tax Credit or their refund. They could point to the car just outside the window that had been fixed with the refund money. And we asked them pretty simple questions about how they planned to spend, or had their plans of spending actually shaken out as they had imagined, or had other things cropped up. A reminder that the Earned Income Tax Credit, for the families that receive it, comes in one paycheck. It comes through your tax refund. So just as some of you in this room enjoy receiving a tax refund, so too do EITC recipients. The check that they receive, because there is this redistribution in this credit, is often the biggest check that they'll get all year, and it's quite substantial. Pictured here are single parents, although in many of these cases, the number of children and one's income defines how much you'll get. So these individual moms here who are green and hairless could also have partners, really, and it would still shake out to be that way. This is a large amount. Most parents don't receive this amount. It's about half of what the maximum credit is on average. However, if you have children, which most people do if they're qualifying for significant portions of the EITC, that means they're also getting the child tax credit. So coupled together, they are receiving quite a substantial portion. So these numbers that I'm sharing here do reflect the proportion that one's tax refund is in relation to one's annual income. It's a sizable chunk of their annual income, and they're getting it in one fell swoop, which is quite different than a middle class or upper class income structure. Now, how are they spending it? Are they approaching it like it's found money? Do they go grocery shopping like this picture would depict, or are they using it for bigger purchases, down payments on homes, cars, and this kind of mobility purchase? And the answer that I'm not going to have a lot of time to share with you today is that they do it all. So in a nutshell, take my word for it, but you're welcome to also read my scholarship with my colleagues on this. The biggest chunk is truly reconciling past debt. Because we lack a livable wage, people who are working at a poverty rate essentially go into the red all year long. So they anticipate this one check that allows them to reconcile their debt. Now, the picture also shows that some of the money does go to these larger mobility purchases that we hope that it would go towards. And a little bit, very little bit, goes toward treats. Less than 7% are allocated towards what I would have imagined more of the money actually went to. Again, you can't see the top of my beautiful slide, but it says the meaning of the earned income tax credit. And that's what I want to share with you today. There are 4 themes that emerged in these long interviews with the recipients of this special tax credit. And so I'll give you the punchline first, and as I have time, I'll share with you the words of the people that I spoke with. So 1, the tax refund provides the recipient with a sense of dignity and mobility dreams in the following ways. And the first here is not surprising. We might have predicted this. It allows these credit-constrained households some financial relief. It provides rewards for working in low-wage jobs, and it temporarily elevates their consumer status. It allows recipients to feel like they're good providers for their children. And finally, and interestingly, we find persistent hopes and dreams of savings for the future, particularly dreams around home ownership, even if these dreams often become frustrated by the recipient's debt. This says relief. And so I want to share with you some of the words of our respondents, because I have found in teaching that sometimes the words and the stories matter as much as the punchlines. So one single mom that I spoke with in Boston described the relief that almost everyone that we spoke with articulated. One mom who was a medical assistant described receiving that check in January. And she told us, I think about my refund all year long. I can't wait until I get my tax money. Of course, you're thinking of all kinds of things that you can spend it on. I can get a bigger TV, or I should get a laptop, or stuff like this. But I mean, realistically, it comes at a good point of time where, okay, I need to pay bills, and everything comes into perspective of what's a priority and what I really need. So her relief was really typical of all of our respondents. Most spend it catching up on bills. But it also captures how they're thinking about that tax refund for throughout the entirety of the year, because it's such special money. It's also considered a reward for working fairly lousy jobs by their own estimation. One EITC recipient told us, I was like, I gotta go to work so I can file my taxes this year. That's all I think about. Let me go to work so I can file my taxes. It's definitely tied to this idea of being a reward for work. One mom told me that about the relief that comes from not having as much financial anxiety after she receives her check. It gives you that feeling that when you go to the grocery store, you don't have to count every penny. You know what I mean? It's just nice to know that you have that extra money to be able to, buy those things you'd turn your head on normally. And finally, there's a real recognition that they're receiving this money because of their children. And it seems to follow, based on their own narratives, that they spend it accordingly. Parents are recognizing that it is from because of their kids. And one mom told me this: I was able to buy the kids something that they were wanting. I can't do that often. She's really big into Dora. Dora is huge in her life. So I was able to get her a little Dora table and chairs. I also got her some extra clothing. It might have been a couple dollars more expensive than normal. It might have even been double the price. But she got what she needed, and at the same time, she felt like $1 million. My kids felt like $1 million. And finally, we hear about the persistence of hopes and dreams for home ownership. I know my panelists will be speaking about that, so I'm going to skip over this momentarily. To summarize some of the benefits of the earned income tax credit as it relates to the hopes of upward mobility and the American dream. First, there's true relief from financial pressure. They go into debt because of low, terrible wages, but they do have some reconciliation at the end of the year. They're able to feel like real Americans, as one respondent told me, because she can go shopping without having to worry about the cost of her groceries for a week or two. They feel pride in being able to give their kids some of their wants, not only their needs, but also their wants at least in this one time per year. And it does demonstrate some forward vision that is unlike the old welfare system of TANF. This encourages people to think about the future critically and to dream about the future. Now, in the question and answer session, I would also hope that people would ask about the challenges to the earned income tax credit, because by no means is it a panacea, as many of you know. The relief is short-lived, so they pay down their debt, but then what? Many of the dreams that are so beautifully articulated by my respondents aren't realized. And so what do we do with that? And so asset building, the hopes of home ownership are thwarted and maybe not necessarily realized. And there's also the challenge at the state level around the earned income tax credit that we can talk about in the question and answer session. So in a nutshell, this is a policy that all of us should get behind. It is pro-work, it is pro-family, it is anti-poverty, it is our biggest cash assistance program, and the social science around this social policy is not ambiguous by any stretch. It works to motivate work and to get people out of poverty. So if there's anyone here who cares about the American dream for vulnerable families, I would think that you walk away today being very, very much in favor of the earned income tax credit.